Now, I just want to welcome everybody. This is Explore the Beat. We're so glad you're here. My name is Sarah. I work with Building Beats, a nonprofit organization based in New York, providing music and podcasting education to youth in New York City and LA. Now, Explore the Beat is a collaboration with New York Music Month, Extended Play, an initiative of the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. Now, through New York Music Month, Extended Play Initiative will be offering free music production and podcasting workshops through May of this year. So be sure to check out the amazing lineup of workshops on our website. I'm going to drop some links in the chat box so you can check those out in the meantime. And let me just, all right. So today's workshop is The Music is Done. Now what? During this workshop, you're going to learn how to get people to listen to your music, get on a label, and get your music distributed, amongst many more useful things. Now, your teaching artist today will be Sarah Skolnick, aka Riobamba, an Ecuadorian Lithuanian multidisciplinary artist and cultural activist. She is a member of techno-feminist booking agency Disc Women's Roster and is founder of the record label Apocalypsis. She's previously led A&R for New York-based label Fania Records and was music editor of digital platform Mezcla. Her work has been featured in Vogue magazine, Rolling Stone, and the New York Times with performance highlights at Panorama Festival, MoMA, PS1, Warm Up, and so much more. So if you have any questions or if you're experiencing any technical issues, feel free to send me a private chat. But other than that, I hope y'all enjoyed the workshop and take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Sarah, for the intro. I'm super happy to be here with y'all. All right. Without further ado, I'm going to dive into a slideshow right now. I will be going through a bunch of different techniques, and you'll be leaving with some templates and worksheets that you'll be able to use on your own. So while I'm going through all this information, please feel free to drop any questions that you have in the chat, and I'll leave time for that at the end of the session today so we can walk through those. So today the topic is the music is done, now what? This is an outline of what I'm going to be covering today. So I'll be going through the details of a record release timeline. This is different techniques that I've used from both an artist perspective and also a label perspective. So it gives you a really comprehensive look at being not only self-released, but also working with labels. And that includes project management, contracting, press kits, a media tracker, and then I'll go into distribution. So different options for distribution services to give you a full look at the different methods that are out there so you can find what works best for you. Different file specs and metadata that you'll need for a release that you do in any distribution platform. Analytics will be the next topic, and that's for tracking and monitoring your release's performance and finding maybe patterns that are helpful for understanding things that were helpful or challenging in the release process and how it's reaching people. I will also cover revenue, so different types of royalties and PROs, which are performance rights organizations, specifically for songwriters and composers and publishers. And then vinyl, I'd love to throw in a little bit of info for that. It's not everybody's go-to necessarily, but I think it's helpful information as an option. And then questions. So this is me. My artist name is Riobamba. I'll drop my contact information at the end. I've been a producer and DJ for the last decade. I have a record label called Apocalypsis, which celebrates artists de aquí y de allá, which means from here and from there. And the motivation of the record label is to do everything in its power to redistribute equity in the music industry. So that's done through label releases, event and experiential production, and cultural activism, which in this case is through education like this, and also mutual aid and benefit event series. So the toolkit that I'm going to walk through now is specifically for record release. That includes the timeline, which is a project management checklist, contracting in case you're working with other artists, a press kit, which includes bios and press releases. And then if you are pitching to media, a template that I use for tracking how that's performing. So I'm going to switch my screen here to the record release timeline. Okay. So I'll be sharing this at the end. This is a full template that is a checklist of different things that you will need to prepare for uploading to digital distribution. So I've broken it into 5 different phases. The first being the actual music itself, which I'm sure you're deeply involved in as artists yourself. So this is probably more in terms of a model of working with a label. So this would be sending or receiving demos, but for yourself, you're also going to have a process of different drafts of your recordings. And then finally, once you reach something that you're happy with, to send it out for mastering and perhaps mixing. Um, in the case that you are working with a label, you're going to be doing contracting, or at least I would strongly suggest doing contracting so that everything is spelled out, especially when it comes to when royalties are rolling in for your beautiful tracks. You want to make sure that you have a firm structure in place for how things are being split financially. I think this is a really critical part of the record release process is thinking about release assets. So, like Rick was saying, the challenge that they're facing is reaching different listeners. And I think part of the preparation process of preparing a release is the storytelling aspect of it. So I highly suggest considering making sure you have a media packet or a one-page media packet for that that will include a bio and liner notes or a press release for your release. So let's say that you're working on the artist side of things. You're going to start with the bio questionnaire, which I'll also be showing in a moment, an album questionnaire. So the bio questionnaire looks like this. I'll be diving it into more, but it's basically getting into really granular, specific details around your background and your story so that other people who are listening can understand that and maybe they connect with it and find resonance in it as well. I have a similar template that we can use for press releases. So this goes into the backstory, not only of the recording itself, but what was the inspiration behind the release? Where was it recorded? I love hearing studio stories of like who was in the studio that day, who was involved, what challenges or opportunities came out of that, any anecdotes that you want to share behind making the release. So any particular gear, anything funny, sad, magical, etc., that happened in the recording process. Um, Notable names to highlight, making sure to give acknowledgement and credit for people that appeared on the record, samples that were involved, anything like that. Storytelling in terms of like the arc of yourself as an artist. So what's the difference between this release compared to previous releases? Looking forward, hopefully, this year or beyond, what can audiences expect from your live show? How is your live show different versus recordings? And for me, especially on the label side, and especially if you're considering pitching to labels, this is probably the most important part, is providing a track by track description so that you can get really descriptive about each track that's involved in an EP or a record. And I work with a lot of Spanish speaking artists or Quechua speaking artists. So translations are really helpful for reaching beyond the folks that speak those languages. Okay, I'll switch back to this spreadsheet here. So the bio and the album questionnaire is really building the storytelling arc around your release. Album artwork is really important as well. You might want to consider press photos specifically for the release. And all these different components are what get built into the press release itself. And if you are considering pitching to media, you can identify what would be the lead single on the EP or the album that you're working with. And perhaps you want to make merchandise around it. Again, this is covering all the possible bases and you can always scale back. And then once you have all these assets ready, you're going to submit that metadata and the release to distribution. I'll be showing different examples of what distribution looks like. And a lot of distributors, even independent distributors, will ask for your press release and press photos upon submitting the release because they're going to use those assets to pitch to Spotify, Apple, Tidal, etc. for playlist placement. And honestly, when it comes to playlists, unless you're an artist that already has a big following, I think that playlists are really helpful for reaching new audiences. And a lot of that really comes out of the press release and different editors finding resonance with that. Um, Release date would probably be above that because you want to confirm what the release date is first. And distributors, you will usually want to give them about 4 weeks notice before submitting. I'm sorry, 4 weeks from submitting to the release date so that they have time to process it and to get it ready for pitching and hopefully get you different playlist pitching within those 4 weeks. So if you can give them even more time, I think that's usually really helpful. And these last couple of sections here are for considering different promo strategies. So I love usually doing a release party or some kind of event in person. Now you could do maybe a live stream or some kind of talk or digital event over Zoom. If you're pitching to media, you can confirm a release exclusive, like if you want to pitch it to somewhere for the lead single or something like that. And also building up an email list, you can send it out in an email blast to your press list or to your mailing list. And the last couple of things are just checklists to make sure that you update website, social media with the different assets that you have for the release. And if you're working with artists to schedule recurring payments, that usually occurs on a quarterly basis. So if you're the label manager, or if you're receiving payments from a label or from a third party, you're going to look for those on a quarterly basis usually. So contracting, this is super important. If you are working with a label, get a contract. Or even if you're working with somebody who's featuring on a release that you're doing and you're self-releasing it, get a contract. I will share this template with you. I will also say that I take no liability for any contracts that come out of it, but this is something that was produced by an attorney that I worked with and seems really comprehensive in terms of covering different kinds of royalties and recording commitments. And this is an example of an exclusive license agreement. So you're saying that in this case, the record label has the right to exploit or to make money off of the recording. And the artist and the songwriter and producer all retain their songwriter and publisher rights. So the label is only working with recording, the composition and the songwriting is separate, and the artists retain the rights to that. And to me, that's very important to make sure that artists retain the rights to their own work, the ownership to their own work. And in this case, this is rights for 10 years, which I think is a generous amount of time for the artist to give to a label. And the split is up to you to determine. I'm happy to go into more details about this if you have questions after I send this to you later, but just to say, yeah, contracts rule. The press kit, we already went over that a bit in terms of the bio questionnaire and press release questionnaire. And the last strategy I would use in terms of building up the release is considering having a spreadsheet like this, which also will be shared, to just track if you have different contacts of folks that work in media or you've had successful placements in media before. It's just kind of like keeping a digital phone book of those people, tracking, name, email, where they're located, what their title is at the publication, so music editor, freelancer, etc. Different categories like genre, I usually like to add notes in terms of if a writer has a specialty for things that they cover. So I can keep in mind if I have a release coming up that probably certain people are more predisposed to covering certain styles of music or certain kinds of stories than others. And then, yeah, tracking other points of contact like links or Twitter, Instagram, etc. Okay. So, yep, we already went over these things. You have the music itself, artist assets, distribution, promo, and then the actual rollout or release, which might be all digital now. And the basic communication that you want to get through your promo is the press release communicating who, what, where, when, and why. It's missing where. But I think the why is really important, of just why is this story important? Why is it relatable? What maybe current event or social event is it commenting on, so that it can tie into other storytelling in terms of media. And yeah, the strategies involve creating a media mailing list, like I just showed, and considering an exclusive premiere pitch if you have a lead single. Okay, so distribution. This is the fun stuff. So the way that distribution is set up in the US, at least, is there's different tiers of distribution. When it comes to the majors are Sony, Universal, Warner. If we're talking about independent distribution partners, you'll enter into a distribution agreement where you're agreeing to a royalties split. In the case of Apocalypsis, I work with a distributor called Symphonic, specifically because they mostly specialize in Latinx music. And when it comes to playlist pitching, they have contacts at the streaming platforms that are tailored towards that. And in the case of Symphonic as an independent distribution partner, they take 20% of revenue for their services, and the label retains 80%, which to my understanding is pretty typical. So 80-20 in favor of the record label is what you want to look for. If you can find something even better in favor of the record label, then that's great. There's also options like Distrokid or CD Baby that are open distribution platforms / aggregators. And what that means is that the artist, rather than splitting with a distribution partner, the artist retains 100% of revenue. And in exchange for Distrokid or CD Baby getting your tracks onto Spotify, etc., they take either a flat fee or you pay an annual subscription, which would make sense in the case if you have multiple releases throughout the year. Regardless of whatever option you go for, I would also strongly suggest getting your release up on Bandcamp, where Bandcamp will retain only 15% of sales, and then artist retains the rest. And as I'm sure a lot of you have seen, Bandcamp has been doing a Bandcamp day every first Friday of the month where artists take 100% of revenue. So that, in terms of having access to a platform like that, I think it's a pretty fair split for artists. And when you're preparing your release for distribution, these are the different specs that you want for your file. So the mastered file, or the file that you submit, you want to have these specs for the stereo audio. Usually FLAC or WAV format is most typical. And if you have an MP3, there's a way to convert it through iTunes to WAV. I don't have those instructions with me, but if you just look it up on Google or whatever, it's like a 3-step process and really easy in case you need a WAV. You're going to want your metadata, which I'll share in just a second what that looks for. And again, keep in mind that 4 weeks out from release date is a nice amount of time to prepare your release. And in the case of Symphonic, this is what the metadata looks like. So I will share screen so you can see that more fully. Okay, so these are all the different release details that you're going to want to have. You have, for example, in this case, the name of the title of the EP, or I'm sorry, the single is Criatura. The type, you can select either single or album. Catalog number, this is how I formatted it for the label. So just the 4 first letters of the label and then continued by 00 and then the number of the release. So if you're releasing independently, you can just figure out a code for that works for you. The UPC code is generated by whatever distributor you work for, or work with rather. And then you have the release date, the pre-order date. If you want to do that, you can set that up through distribution, number of tracks, the artist name. So this is one of my EPs, so I have my artist name here. And you can select genres. So when it comes to genres, in my case, I selected Latin. And I'm surprised actually here, usually second genre will be a subgenre or something more specific. So it could be like Latin, and then the secondary genre is experimental electronic or something like that. Um, Release price tier front means just this default, whatever that is. So I believe it's like 129 for iTunes or something like that. And then the label at the very end. And the song details, I can't click this because it's just a screenshot. But the song details is just where you're gonna put the songwriter's name. So not necessarily your artist name, but your legal name that you'll be registering in performance rights organizations, which I'll show in just a minute. But that's really important so that you get paid songwriting and publishing royalties. Okay. And once you've submitted your release and your release is live, there's a couple different dashboards depending on what kind of distribution platform you're working with. I'll show a couple different examples of dashboards. I'll show one for Symphonic as an independent distributor. I'll show one for Spotify, which you can just sign up as an artist directly and track your analytics that way. And then Bandcamp also has one as well. And this is helpful just to see like what's working, where people are listening, and how you're reaching folks. Okay, so this is what Symphonic's dashboard looks like. I'm going to scroll down a bit. So it tracks in the last 7 days, for example, it'll show you how your release is performing and where it's performing best. So based on this, it looks like Spotify in the green is doing best for streaming numbers, and Apple Music coming in second, with Amazon like non-existent, it looks like. I will get a little bit more specific with details here. So you can adjust depending on date range or partner. So those would be the different distribution platforms. And yeah, it gets into more specific numbers here. In this, since it's set up for the label, I can see per artist how different artists are tracking. And then also the different territories where people are listening the most. This is my favorite part. It's really amazing to see how specific it is. So if you have a release and you're noticing that a release is tracking well, like in Mexico, for example, in this case, for me as an artist or as a label manager, that would make me consider, well, maybe I should on the next release invite a Mexican artist to feature on the track, because I'm noticing that a fan base is growing there and I want to continue to engage with them. On Spotify, this is what the dashboard looks like as well. So they'll give you comparison compared to the last 28 days, which is helpful for tracking trends. It's a similar dashboard here in terms of number of streams. And Spotify, I believe, gets a bit more specific in terms of demographic, right? So you can track in Spotify for artists where people are reaching your music from. So this is more direct search from my profile or from one of the releases. This is if a listener has added a release or a single to their own personal library and they're accessing it that way. Other listeners' playlists, Spotify editorial playlists, and then algorithmic playlists. I have no idea what other would be. I'm very curious about that. And you can also access information here by gender, how people self-identify, and then ages. So this is helpful also for considering marketing. If you're doing paid marketing on social media, this gives you pretty specific information around what age groups are interested in your music. And again, top countries. And top cities as well. Yeah, it gets very specific. And last but not least, this is a Bandcamp dashboard, and you can track here. You can move the date range. You can see the cumulative plays here for a release. And you can see even like if people listen to the complete track, partial, skipped it. This is just for plays. And then you can also see sales for exactly how many people have bought the track. Again, where people are accessing the track from, and the map of different listeners. This is not my beautiful map. Okay, good to know. All right. And so this is a look now at different kinds of royalties. All right, I'm gonna move extra slow through this because this has taken me a long time to understand. So I'll do my best to explain it. There are three main types of royalties that you can receive as an artist. So the first one is mechanical royalties, and that reflects the licensing agreement that I showed earlier from the record label for the template. And mechanical royalties cover physical or digital reproductions or distribution of your copyrighted songs. So that includes things such as vinyl, CD, cassettes, digital downloads, and it also applies to streaming services. So all the different analytics I was just showing you in Spotify, that will be reflected in mechanical royalties. And in the case, again, that you are signed through a record label, you'll be paid out directly from them. And that's also included in that template for the contract. Or if you are going directly through music distribution, like CD Baby and Distrokid, you will receive the royalties directly through those services. Performance royalties are generated through copyrighted songs being performed, recorded, played, or streamed in public. And this is comprehensive of AM/FM radio, television, clubs, restaurants, bars, live concerts, shopping malls, music streaming services, internet radio. This gets a little bit more specific when it says music streaming services. That would apply to a service like Pandora or SiriusXM, where you as the listener are not selecting what's being played. There's an algorithm or there's programming involved in that third party to decide the music streaming selections. In the case of performance royalties, you'll be paid out through songwriter royalties and publishing royalties. And performance royalties, again, songwriter and publishing equal performance royalties, and those are collected by performing rights organizations. I'll go into more detail in that in a second. And third is synchronization royalties. So that is generated when copyrighted music is paired or synced with visual media. So that's when a track gets a placement on film, TV, commercials, video games, advertisements, and there's usually a music supervisor who's responsible for selecting what music is paired with those platforms. And again, you'll get, in this case, both songwriting and publishing royalties because your music is getting played again in public. That's included in performance royalties. And on top of that, you'll also have a license agreement with the film TV commercial super who's in charge of that. So you should be expecting both performance royalties and also the licensing agreement that you agree upon with the music supervisor to exploit your music as it's synced with visual media. So to get a little bit more in depth about performance royalties, they exist again in two parts, songwriter and publishing. And these are collected and paid out by your PRO, performance rights organizations. The two main PROs in the US are BMI and ASCAP. Both are free to register as artists. So if you're not already registered, I would highly suggest doing that. If you want to register to be the administrator of your own publishing, you will have to pay, I think ASCAP is like $150 and BMI is $250 or something like that. But basically, when you have a song registered in a PRO, 50% goes to the songwriter and 50% goes to the publisher. So if you are not working with a third-party publisher, you want to become your own publisher, your own self-administered publisher. So it's worth investing in that publishing registration so that you can make sure to collect that revenue. CSAC is another in the US. It's invite only. There's certain nonprofit ones. I'm not as familiar with that model, but they do exist. And then once you signed up, make sure to register your songs and your publishing to begin receiving songwriter and publishing royalties. And here's again the split. So 50% publishing, 50% songwriter. You can assign it to a publishing company if you want to join forces with somebody else who specializes in that. And they'll be responsible, whoever is responsible for it, will be managing the lifespan and exploitation of the song. So majors, major affiliated, independent, and writer publishers are different tiers of that, just like how there's different tiers of distribution platforms. And this is just to give you a breakdown of where most of the music industry revenue comes from in the US, at least in 2018. So 75% of revenue was through streaming, 12% digital downloads, physical, so CDs, vinyl, 10%, and then sync for licensing for TV, commercials, etc., made up about 3% of royalties. And this is a somewhat depressing statistic, but the majors take a big chunk of that revenue. So that's just when it comes to working with Spotify, like that is something that you're up against, is that the majors are very, very influential in those spaces. And for independent artists, it's a challenge. And that's why I encourage to continue thinking out of the box and thinking about things like Bandcamp, where you are not up against these mammoth things. Streaming revenue, this is how payout looks based on different streaming platforms for mechanical revenue. So for Spotify, artists will have to do 229 streams to earn $1. So it's 0.004 per stream. Tidal is slightly better, 0.0125 per stream. So 80 streams to earn $1. Apple Music, 136 streams. YouTube is really abysmal. It's 1,149 streams to earn $1. But Bandcamp is 15% sales, so that's something. And I also want to boost, there's currently a campaign for penny per stream regarding Spotify that the Union of Allied Musicians and Workers are promoting right now. I can drop a link in the chat later. But they've been doing different actions and protests in terms of demanding 1 cent per stream on Spotify, so that artists can start making hopefully a living wage off of streaming. Last but not least is vinyl. So different considerations if you are considering doing a vinyl release is what budget do you want to start with? Because oftentimes that's helpful for starting at a number and then working back in terms of the quantity of pressings, vinyl pressings, and from there you can find the price per unit. You can determine whether you print labels through the vinyl pressing plant or if that's something that you do on your own to be more cost efficient. You can decide if you want to print full color sleeves for vinyl, which also again ups the price a little bit. And then what do you want to charge for shipping? And what are you paying for shipping from the vinyl pressing plant? So these are some examples of some research I was doing for a small press of vinyl. If you're doing under 500 units, it's called limited release or small release vinyl pressing. And these are some of the vinyl press outlets that do small release or limited release vinyl pressing. So if you are going with somebody like Furnace, where you do their minimum of 500, you're in the end going to be paying a lot less per unit for the pressing. Moby Neko is another example. I can't attest to any of these. I've never used these, but this was part of the research process. Moby Neko does as little as 50 units, but then it comes out to be $18 per unit. So it's kind of playing with what your budget is and what makes sense in terms of being cost efficient. Okay, so I'm going to leave my contact information after we chat, but I would love to open it up for questions now.
Yeah, it seems like we have a question in the chat. If your song is already streaming but not registered, will PROs give you the royalties that you would have earned if you were signed up from date of release?
I don't know off the top of my head. I believe it should, because if it's registered to your name, it should be backdated to the release date.
We got one. Any
First,
advice on releasing first singles?
great. So that's exciting for singles. I think that I would recommend thinking comprehensively in terms of the storytelling of the release and checking off the different um, lines in terms of having your bio ready, having a press release ready, press photos. In the event that you're able to find press coverage, it's about making it as easy as possible for folks to work with the release and get it out there for more people. And in terms of reaching out to people for your first single, if you have any specific media outlets in mind, I would recommend even going to like articles that are covering artists that you like or that are similar to your sound, maybe, and looking at who wrote the article, seeing if you can find their contact info and reaching out to them directly. As a music editor, that was always really exciting for me, because there's certain channels that are more traditional, like if you're working with a publicist or a label that have consistent releases and established base already. But in my opinion, it's the responsibility of music editors and journalists to be connecting with folks that are on the rise and have something new to offer to the music world. So that would be my suggestion. And yeah, I think that email is usually best in terms of pitching. As a music editor, I know that folks can get overwhelmed sometimes with getting DMs or like hit up that way. So email is best, making sure that you include a folder or somewhere to stream the track, um, a bio, even if it's just like 2 or 3 sentences to give them an example of who you are, an idea of who you are, and to have, again, a minimum of 2 or 3 sentences about the release itself and answering the questions of who, what, where, when, and why.
All right, cool. We have another question. Any special suggestions on how to build a good contact list?
Good question. I would think first about people that have already supported your work. If you do have releases out already, reach out to them and just ask them for their email address and mention, you're starting to build a list. Can we keep in touch? I think like asking for permission to add somebody to your list is important so that you know that you definitely have their support. And I think for me, another big part of it was going out and supporting other artists, like showing up. Well, once things reopen, showing up to shows, but now, maybe hopping around to other people's live streams or things that are happening online and connecting and really building authentic relationships with people. It can carry you really far. Also, I would suggest, like in terms of the who, what, where, when, and why for the press release, is having specific details around when exactly you're releasing the record, so that people that are covering or writing about the track have a sense of like the level of urgency or the space that they have to assign it to a writer and take a little bit more time with it. So yeah, those kinds of things are really important. How do you add metadata to your WAV file? I didn't see enough fields to enter info when using iTunes. Okay, so metadata is what you're going to use when you're working with a distributor when you take the WAV file and upload it to Distrokid or CD Baby, or if you work with an independent distributor, if you are just editing the metadata in iTunes, it's a bit more limited. I don't think that you can add things like songwriter or publisher, things like that. But yeah, that's specifically when you're uploading it to a third party for the metadata. I'm also going to show something really quick. If you do decide to work with a distributor, something that they will create for you, and make sure to ask for it if they don't mention it, is creating a link tree for your release. So there's you can preview the release here. This is really helpful if you're reaching out to media, for example. They can just open it and preview the file there. It has the album artwork, and then before the release it'll say pre-save on each of these, and then after the release it switches to play. But it's a good way to, you can email blast it out to your followers or post it on social media, and people can start pre-saving the release already ahead of time. And I think it looks clean. It looks nice.
But, you know, in general, thank you for everybody for joining us. There's going to be more, I believe, Explore the Beat. I think we have 1 or 2 more workshops coming up this month. And if you want to continue having this conversation with us, or if you have any questions about today's workshop, you can actually feel free to join our Discord, which I will give you the link for as well. All right, and I think that's all the information. Again, just keep an eye out on our blog so you can see that blog post when it comes up. This video will also be a part of that. And I'm going to just put that there for Explore the Beats. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for everybody for attending. There's nothing else. I hope everybody just has a beautiful rest of your day, and we hope to see you at the next one.
Thank you. Have a great night.